It is a major gamble that the Walt Disney Company is engaged in right now. Bobby Iger, CEO, back in the saddle. He has decided now that Disney Plus, well, it's got too much content. They're going to cut it. And when they cut that content, they're also going to jack the prices up on consumers. Will the consumers stay or will they continue to drop? That's what we saw in the last earnings report. We'll dive into that right now. All right, folks, welcome back to the WDW Pro channel, where we're explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of that culture curve. We do it each and every day. Happy to do it. Happy to cover entertainment every chance we can. In this case, we're covering Disney, giant gamble that Rob Iger has decided to make with the company. They placed all their bets on streaming. Now, they may be wishing they had not. Joining to talk through all of this, we have an expert panel. We've got Fat Steve and Tom Connors and Valiant Renegade all here to help us as we navigate through this issue. First up on the docket, we've got an article out of Collider. This says Disney to purge content from streaming platforms as Disney Plus and Hulu merge. It looks like the Disney Vault is back. This one's by Marco Vito Odo. And folks, before we get into it, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. You can stick it to those algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. Here we go. Disney is taking a note out of Warner Brothers Discovery Notebook, as the company announced it will cut content from Disney Plus and Hulu on their latest investor call. In addition to removing content from Disney Plus and other streaming services, the House of Mouse also told investors they would be producing less content moving forward. Sounds like a winning recipe, doesn't it? No company is an island in the age of financial capitalism, and even powerhouses such as Disney need to justify their business strategies to outside investors. You know, before I go any further, let me just say, I'm so confused by that sentence. No company is an island in the age of financial capitalism. How long have we been in this age? Like, you don't, never mind. In the latest Disney investor call last Wednesday, May 10th, the company commented on Disney Plus recently losing more than 2 million subscribers. Well, that's underselling the exact number. The service's first significant drop in clients since its 2019 release. Notice, though, folks, that that word significant there, that word significant is thrown in to hide the fact that it's not their first drop. I guess it's just their first significant drop, according to this author. To diminish expenses, Disney CEO Bobby Iger assured investors the company would be more careful about greenlighting new TV shows, She-Hulk, and movies, Peter Pan and Wendy, as all the content made.
Where'd that go?
For Disney Plus should be aimed at retaining or growing the streamer's subscribers. Gentlemen, before we get into this Iger quote, what do you make of this Disney cutting content? Is this a recipe for hanging on to consumers? And do you think that people will begin to flee the service as they realize that, hey, where's all my new stuff?
Well, I mean, from a basic standpoint, so this is obviously not the first quarter they've had a drop in subs, and none of this was necessarily unforeseen. This began last year. This was easily forecast and frankly was forecast and guided forward by Disney with the deletion of the IPL contract. They did not renew the streaming contract for the Premier Cricket League that was the big draw in India. Now, to be fair, because we pick on Disney a lot here, but I want to remind folks, and I said this at the time, and I stand behind it to this day, Disney, I think, at that point, it very easily could be argued they made a very wise decision because of the way that the rights were broken up to where broadcast was separated from streaming for the IPL. Disney retained at a $3 billion U.S. equivalent cost over the course of several years, the broadcast rights to the IPL. They did not go deep in the paint on the streaming rights. They let that go to a conglomerate that was led by Viacom, CBS, Paramount. Because the broadcast rights for the IPL in India are a far bigger enterprise than at this point is streaming. Now, 5 years from now, that is probably going to be a different story. But I think Disney financially made the right decision for today, because that would have cost them another $3 billion. And the IPL rights they have now came from the Fox purchase. The bulk, again, to be fair, the bulk of the subscriber loss came from the India Hotstar system, which are non-core Disney Plus subscribers, the ones that basically make Disney Plus the least amount of money at an ARPU, average revenue per user. They lost 300,000 subscribers in the US and Canada core market. That is the bigger story. Even though it is a smaller number, the important thing to recognize there is that they lost subs in their most valuable, their most financially viable core market in the US and Canada, especially during a quarter when their biggest Disney Plus show in history, The Mandalorian, premiered its third season. That's a problem. So, go ahead, Pro. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just agreeing with you. That is a huge problem, and you will see that almost nowhere. I have yet to read an article that admits that The Mandalorian came out during this exact same quarter, and therefore, The Mandalorian is not growing this service. It cannot be if you're losing hundreds of thousands of subscribers simultaneously. It also needs to be said that the quarter prior, that growth was stagnant for North America. So whereas if you had healthy growth in other parts of the world, you would offset this issue in India, that is not occurring. Tom, let me read this quote from Rob Iger and then get your take on it. We realize that we made a lot of content that is not necessarily driving sub growth. Yeah, you think? And we're getting much more surgical about what it is we make. We haven't seen that yet. So as we look to reduce content spend, we're looking to reduce it in a way that should not have any impact at all on subs. Well, if The Mandalorian cannot draw in subs, what can, Tom?
Mud wrestling.
Well, a certain type of mud wrestling probably could bring in subs. I'll grant you that.
I really don't know at this point. I mean, Disney has nothing that really would make anybody jump to their service at this point that they probably haven't already tried, or at least the problem is they're just not in this state. I can't think of anything. Like if it was years ago, I could think of a few things, but I don't trust them to be able to do anything. Like look at Willow as a prime example of how they can mess something up real bad and nobody.
So you're saying that you don't have faith in the creatives who now work at Disney to be able to produce content. Yeah. And that's why I wonder, maybe it's time for a Bluey movie and Disney pull the rights to be able to have that on Disney Plus. Because Bluey's always in the top 10.
It's not even that, though. Here's the thing. I hearken back to an analyst question on a Disney earnings call. It might have been a year ago. It might have been the second fiscal quarter of 2022. So literally 12 months ago, that earnings call, when and one of the analysts, I don't remember, it might have been from Goldman Sachs or Barclays, I can't recall, but they asked a very pertinent question that I thought was absolutely brilliant. And I hearkened on this during the post-mortem wrap-up on the stream. That question came in the form of, well, look, when Disney Plus opened up, a lot of us out there presumed that due to Disney's massive historical, already existing library of content, that would be sufficient to make Disney Plus a financially viable enterprise. And then he questioned this massive content spend on all of this new Disney Plus proprietary programming that was costing them, at that point, quite literally $1 billion a quarter in losses, effectively to generate this subgrowth. And the question was, why does Disney need to do that with this massive library that's already out there? Fast forward to right now, Pro, this article that you have on the screen, that is exactly the problem that institutional analyst brought up. Like, Disney is now saying that we need to pull back on content spend. We don't need to keep making these 100, 200 million proprietary Disney Plus exclusive projects when we already have a library of content. The Nielsen ratings are bearing this out. When consistently, week after week after week, what is the thing that's always up there? Bluey. What is the thing that keeps coming in? Is things that they're putting into theaters already. What usually doesn't hang on the Nielsen ratings very long? Original Disney Plus content shows. Maybe
that's right, and they have no
Mandalorian.
They also don't pull other shows with them, which is what we saw with Wednesday on Netflix, where you had the glow of the show, right? It had the after effect of people sticking around to watch other stuff, and then you would see these obscure shows popping up on a Nielsen, and you said, well, what's going on? And then you realized, oh, people are tuning into Wednesday and sticking around.
Well, and that's what these streaming services are all about, Pro. Like, to answer your initial question is, what does Disney need? They need a Wednesday. They need a Stranger Things. They need a Cobra Kai. They need something.
They had that. They had the Mandalorian, and they killed it with the whole Luke situation.
There's that half of it. The other problem with the Mandalorian is, going back to what Valiant is saying, though, they were budgeting the Mandalorian like it's a $200 million movie.
Yeah,
that's point. Another problem. Same thing with the Marvel shows. And that's getting back to what, Iger's kind of trying to say there, I think. And it's a big duh at the end of the day. It's like, you can't expect to do projects that are at movie level budgets and not put them in theaters and expect to make any money on them. It just doesn't work that way. To quote Harrison Ford in The Force Awakens, that's not how the Force works, right? Like, of course, if you had budgeted things that are budgeted for television, then yes, something like Disney Plus, like Valiant said, is a no-brainer. And they have plenty of classic content, even if you discount the Vault films, which we had a big discussion about on Valiant's last stream about, how they've damaged that brand. And then we've talked about it quite a bit. Like, even if you take those out of the equation, Disney had more than enough content to basically transfer what was the Disney Channel into a streaming format and be one of the top 3, at least, easy. And they're struggling. And because of this, go ahead, Steven. Sorry.
I kind of agree with this in general. It's like, first of all, I understand where they're coming from. They're trying to get rid of they're going to get rid of content and vault it. Great. What content is it? Is it going to be the stuff that's already failed? Or are you going to look at a new plan? Are you going to bring back the Disney that most people know? Like Tom was saying, and we had the discussion on VRs. Bring back the classic movies. Put it on the seasonal rotation. Start making like animated stuff that doesn't cost $200 million. Start aiming for kids without narrative. Just do it to entertain. Like, do your own type of Sesame Street, Mickey Mouse Club. You have all of this stuff there that branches back to the late 80s till now. All you have to do is take the same format and just revamp it for today's style of education or any type of entertainment.
It should have been Disney Channel Plus, not Disney Plus.
Yeah, it should have been Disney Channel. And then you still have your movies. You still have your animated classics. You have all your sections there. You could have put Marvel down at the bottom. You could have put Mandalorian and Star Wars in their own thing. They got to stop spending big and start thinking about spending wisely and spending to entertain. It doesn't take a lot of money to make someone feel good. It just takes enough visual and audio to make them feel like they know what's going on.
And not to go off on another tangent, but I think Valiant would probably agree with this, because we were just talking about how much of a technical success Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is having in its second weekend.
Yeah.
I think that the reason the first weekend struggled and had such a soft opening was because Marvel is so associated with Disney now. Where did that happen? Like, you and I and everybody on this panel have known about that since the sale back in 2012, because this is the kind of stuff we follow. But the normies, they didn't know that Star Wars and Marvel were part of Disney until Disney Plus. That's when a lot of normies became aware of this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the sully of the brand has come in, because like you guys have been saying here, and going off of what Steven was just saying too, is that Disney as a brand has been tarnished. And middle America and most of the families of traditional values, let's say, have turned away in droves. And regardless of what they want to blame on the 4 million subscribers they lost in this last quarter, you can blame cricket all you want. But at the end of the day, what really hurts them is, we saw it at the box office last weekend. And that's how Guardians has managed to have a staying power it has, because people are like, oh, it's not the agenda-driven drivel that we've been getting out of Disney so far. Okay, well, maybe I'll give it a shot then.
It's the whole fact that Disney itself has no longer become a brand. It's become a virus. And I hate saying this with such pretentiousness.
There's a boredom.
But it's an infection now because you're no longer hearing the properties or the name of the show or the name of the title. You're just hearing Disney, and then the backtrack of what all of Disney's done, let's say over the last 5 to 10 years, already puts a weight on it. And it's very hard to dislocate the weight of what's happened to the weight of what could be, because we've never seen what could be positive. We've only, except for Guardians right now, we've seen just the negative. And it's so hard. They're not taking anything that made them great and bringing it to the forefront to show that they can still be great. And I think that's where it's lacking. So I'm hoping that content gets pushed forward while they cut back the stuff that's not doing them any benefit.
So I want to come back in just a moment to the issue of Marvel and Star Wars now being connected to a Disney that families seem to distrust. Before we do, though, let's conclude this article from Collider talking about the vault, the idea that Disney is going to take content and put it out of reach of the public for some unknown, unspecified amount of time. And I'm going to tell you, I think that the genie is out of the bottle. I'm not sure that they can do this successfully, and I'll explain why. Then I want to hear what you guys think. Feel free to counter my claim if I'm wrong somewhere. But if you look at Disney Plus and you say, okay, we're going to move some of this content into the quote unquote vault, which simply means we're going to take it away from you. If they take away content that not many people are watching, then what impact does that have? Nobody cares. And they've had it now with unlimited access for years. So there's not going to be a rush to go watch that now. And then if they cut content that people are watching, let's say they cut Tangled or Moana, or they cut the first season of The Mandalorian, well, that's just going to tick people off. That's going to drive people away from the service. So I don't know where you can remove content that has a positive benefit for the company. Valiant, what strategy could they possibly use that would benefit them in cutting content now?
At this point, and here's the thing, we don't know exactly what sort of content they want to cut. And with the lack of clarity on that matter, it makes me think that I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of content cutting on what we see now with Disney Plus. It could be that case, but more purposefully, it could be on Hulu, because I think this announcement portends the obvious, and that is that Bob Iger, as he opened up his earnings call with, inexplicably, in any other sense of the word, congratulating Universal Studios on the success of the Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, high-fiving your biggest competition.
Yeah, that you're basically going to relinquish content that is currently licensed into Hulu that has been produced by NBC Studios. I think that's the more likely route at this point, because if Disney buys out for $9 to $10+ billion the remaining stake that Universal has in Hulu, then that relinquishment of those licensing rights for NBC-owned property for distribution is going to be the case. NBC has a lot of properties right now that are currently broadcasting on Hulu that, quite frankly, they would much rather have going forward exclusively distributed on their own Peacock service, right? Because it's not going to cost them anything to put them on Peacock. They're already produced and done. But that classic library, that's why I brought that up earlier, why analysts were upset with Disney. It's like, well, why are we spending all this money on, you already had stuff. We didn't need to do all this. You'd still have these subs now without all of this very expensive new content. And quite frankly, the Nielsen numbers bear it out. Okay? Why are you doing this? Peacock wants to get their stuff home for the same reason. They recognize their library of content is what's going to drive sub growth at a very minimal cost by comparison with a high ROI. That's it.
Excellent.
Well, that
point, yeah.
and Hulu is also US based, right? It's not a worldwide thing. And that's what Disney will end up doing, is just basically turning Hulu into the US version of Star and merging it with Disney Plus.
So talk about that for a moment, Tom. They're going to put these two apps, Hulu and Disney Plus, under the same umbrella. You're going to access them both through the same app. That's what they say. How long do those two items remain separate if they're under the same app? And
I think
is the app Disney Plus, or what is it called?
I think you hit it on the head there. I think it's going to no longer be Hulu, because what made Hulu different and why Hulu was one of the main streaming services along with Netflix in the US, and I apologize to those outside of the US because this might be boring or not really even relate to you if you're listening to this, but just bear with me for a moment. Hulu, their claim to fame is that they would used to have television the day after it was out for almost all the major networks and cable channels.
Yes.
Right. With a few exceptions. Obviously, when this merger happens, or whatever you want to call it, it'll probably kill that deal. I don't know how much of it's even left now, because I haven't paid all that much attention to Hulu in a while. And they don't have a ton of like original materials, so there's not going to be a huge loss there outside of The Handmaid's Tale and a few things, like as far as like their hits, as far as things. But
well, they're getting a new Futurama reboot and a new King of the Hill.
I was just going to say,
but what's the point in that now? Why not just put this straight on Disney Plus?
The point of that is Disney wants some of that. That's what I was going to get to. They need
why not
these
just put them on
shows
Disney Plus instead?
Because I don't know. Because Handmaid's Tale. I know it's going to be a good question. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it at the end of the day. Because I agree, it makes no sense to vault anything. We've already seen some cross pollination on, like, I've seen certain other things show up on my HBO Max or Max app or whatever that were, other companies' movies and stuff like that, and vice versa. Same thing with on Peacock and other places. So they're already starting to do it. So that's part of their game, but I don't think that's going to really fix the problem. All that's going to be doing is they're just going to be like, it's like a big circular motion of each other kind of lending each other their movies. But I agree with it. Vaulting anything from Disney is going to be bad outside of the initial, what is it, 15, 16 titles?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Vault. And honestly, I thought it was a huge mistake to never vault the first 5 or 6 Pixar films either. Right. They would have been smart to put those in the vault too. But now the problem with that is everything on Disney isn't worth anything anymore. And this goes back to what we were saying before. So with that, what they're going to do is take away the uniqueness of Hulu by, I imagine, unless they keep it in some way. I don't know how they're going to manage to keep a lot of those deals, because why would CBS, NBC, or any of these other cable companies that are attached with other studios want anything to do with Disney, right? Outside of, unless it's the revenue stream. But why would Disney have the amount of money to probably pump out that Hulu was at that time? And the only way Hulu could afford to do it is because it was one of the first ad-based systems, and they have been pretty much ad-based since the start.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, Tom, to go straight to your point, I want to show this to everybody. This is the latest Nielsen numbers we have, this from April 10th through 16th.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Nielsen is delayed, and when they can get you the stuff, it's not, you don't get it the week after. But
yeah, it's about a month, 4 weeks delayed usually.
Yeah, this is the list of the top 10 movies on streaming platforms of everything that Nielsen can cover. This was once, and I'm talking about 7-8 months ago now, this was once completely dominated top to bottom with Disney movies, little kids sitting there and just watching these movies over and over and over and being babysat by them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's just Moana.
Mm-hmm.
It's all Netflix, it's Prime, it's Hulu, it's Peacock. Like, Disney has one movie and that's it. And just the impact this must be having over there with them, seeing that kids are not sitting there watching their movies anymore.
Are
the
you
original
saying
content problems, that's the ROI issue, right? That is, you cannot, if you're spending $200 million per shot or close to it to make original programming content for the streaming service, and you're not even really denting the top 10, at least in rare occasions, you really have to look internally and go, okay, reassessment.
Well, look at this, Valiant. If you're Disney and you're putting all this money into this, you're telling me that it's okay if Frozen 2, Tangled, Encanto, all of this is being beaten by Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. Why would the Lorax be beating you?
It's all right, I'll make it even worse. Go for it. Okay, Peacock is starting to show up. Paramount Plus is starting to show up on these charts. Now,
right.
Pro, what have you always heard me now for the last year? What have I continuously reminded audiences about? when it comes
Tell
especially
Steven
to Peacock.
Get back to work in the basement.
Yeah,
Oh,
get a
no,
shake.
no,
Oh,
no.
sorry,
I'm going
sorry,
to cut.
wrong
No, I'm going to cut in here real quickly. What it's showing is that the things we were talking about before about Disney is not as reliable as a family entertainment. It's also now traversing into the fact that Disney is no longer rewatchable.
Well, that's
It's a
it.
great point.
That's a great
Well,
point, Stephen. And
that's
this-
what made the vault system work in the first place, right, guys? Because kids would watch these movies over and over and over, like Pro was just saying, on video till they would wear out, right? And that would be the incentive of having to buy them over and over and over again. Now, granted,
Maybe that's
I know
the secret behind VHS success.
it was. No, it is a big part of it. Is a huge part of it. When disc came along, they were scared of the disc system because guess what? Discs don't wear out.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
But
They thought the vault was dead forever, but they got lucky that Blu-ray came along, and then of course they lost the momentum when it came to 4K. But they could have keep reestablishing these things over time. But no, and you also got to remember, over half the people that own Disney Plus or stream from Disney Plus aren't even kids anymore; it's adults.
Yes.
There's another thing.
Kids are watching TikTok and YouTube and shit. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, but there's another thing to add to this as well. Now I'm going to go kind of the controversial area with this.
Sorry for the language.
You can delete it later, but it's also falling into the factor that parents don't trust leaving their kids alone with Disney.
that too.
That's what I mean by, like, most families. I'm willing to bet not as many families have Disney Plus as you may think at first hand.
Yep.
Because that was what the original. Well, not only exactly, and I think it's diminishing. Plus, you had the fact that over half the people that had it didn't even have kids anyway.
Well, let me say this, and while this is still up, Pro, before you move this, and this is what I want the audiences to understand. I'm about this on the screen right now. I'm about to show everybody here in raw numbers why the Disney model doesn't work. It's in front of your eyes right now. What have we talked about for the last year plus? The deals that Peacock, that NBC Universal Comcast has with Amazon Prime and with Netflix. Netflix gets Amazon Prime gets live action. Netflix gets animated.
Yep.
Look at Cocaine Bear right there on Peacock. Now, Cocaine Bear right there on Peacock is at the number 4 spot. Where's the next closest Disney thing? Is Moana. Even when they have stuff come out, Disney, again, is consuming their own content. Is Disney getting any measurably better ROI by consuming their own content based on these Nielsen numbers than Peacock, than Netflix, or than NBC Universal Comcast? No, they're not. And Peacock is performing these numbers by licensing out their content for the middle 10 months of the pay one window to Netflix and Amazon. They're basically, wait, hang on, Stephen. They're getting the same or better results as Disney in terms of viewership on these Netflix charts. Okay? And Comcast Universal is getting billions of dollars from Amazon and Netflix in the middle of it that Disney isn't. That's the point. This is the crux of the situation. This is what Disney is finally, the analysts, the investors are waking up and realizing. They're looking at charts like this and going, wait a minute, holy hell. Disney is not, they're not getting any better results than Universal, and Universal is bringing in billions of dollars in third-party licensing right now that Disney isn't for the same stuff.
So I want to throw this out here. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I'm thinking the only reason why Moana is up there is because of the recent announcement of the remake live action. If that wasn't announced, do you think Moana would even be there?
Well, so Moana, the reason they're announcing the live action is because Moana continuously appears on this list. Really? It seems, it's the most popular princess girls franchise they have. People make a big deal about Frozen. It doesn't even compare to Moana. And so that's why they're going with it. But that would be an interesting theory, if not for the fact that it's actually the reverse, that Moana is so popular that's why they're rushing to get a live action out.
Then I stand correct.
What I want to go, it was a great comment, though, and it's a chance for all of us to learn a little bit about that, because so many people think that Frozen or Tangled or Zootopia, that they're the popular movies that Disney has, and they've got to make a sequel. And it's like, no, Moana is tremendously more popular if you just look at the ratings. But I want to go to one final article that I think summarizes what Tom was talking about earlier when he was talking about families no longer trusting this brand, and even Marvel and Star Wars now being tarnished by being associated with Disney, which is crazy. You would think it'd be the reverse for Star Wars. It ought to tarnish everything around it. But we'll tread lightly with this one. This one, an article out of Yahoo. They are covering a CBS story. It's by William Clayton, and it says, Florida teacher under investigation after showing Disney movie Strange World to fifth grade class. Now, when I first saw this article, I thought, well, I'm not sure that I agree with a teacher being investigated over this. Perhaps there's just a misunderstanding. Surely this could be corrected by the administration at the school, speaking with the teacher and say, well, not all parents want their kids to watch this movie for particular reasons. Let's not do this again. And you would think that would cover it. Normally that would be the case. I just figured
it was because it was a bad movie.
That's right. It's so bad she needs to be investigated.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why would you show such a piece of crap to kids? I know. Anyway, yeah.
So I'll read the first couple paragraphs or two, and then
I've never actually.
I want to drop down. Well, you're lucky then. It's really bad. But we'll drop down because I'm always trying to explain entertainment, keep people ahead of the culture curve. This article does something that we find often in articles covering this sort of thing. It's a little insidious. I think you'll see that there are some facts buried at the bottom that explain more of what's going on, and then also give us a clue into why families may be tuning out of Disney Plus. So here's how it starts off. It says, a Florida fifth grade teacher is under investigation by the State Department of Education of Florida for inappropriate conduct after showing her fifth grade class Disney's 2022 animated movie, Strange World. The decision to show the film as a brain break followed a rigorous morning of standardized testing. Now, that's one of your first clues that something is up. Showing the film as a brain break doesn't sound very academic, scholastic, etc. And so perhaps that has something to do with being in trouble. And it goes into talk about how this movie is representative of people and how that's why that the teacher's in trouble. It goes on to give us all this stuff about how crazy Florida is and don't move there and blah, 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 right? And then you get down to the bottom and you start to realize, oh, here at the very bottom of this article, they've got some important stuff that may show really what's going on. This teacher says that the investigation is proving to be more traumatizing for the youngsters than the film itself. But the minor representations that have nothing to do with the movie are such a big deal that now admin is in the room, pulling the teacher out, calling the students one by one to the office to interrogate them in the middle of lessons, she said. And then she revealed that some of her students, now remember, this is a fifth grade class. This is in Florida where they're trying to get this kind of stuff out, that being state-sponsored curriculum that goes into orientation issues. She revealed that some of her students told her they were members of the particular community prior to the movie screening. Well, here's my question about that then. Is that what predicated showing it? And why are your presumably prepubescent students telling you that they're part of that community when you would assume that if you've got a class of, let's say, 25 students, that would be 20% of your class of prepubescent students is declaring themselves of a certain orientation that is explicitly sexual. That seems odd. And then it seems odd that that would be the action that precedes you playing a movie that seems to somehow be tied into that. There's some relationship now between
that sounds like
showing
the
the
actual
movie.
Trigger for the investigation, not the movie itself.
And then you go, oh, so she's probably not being investigated just for showing a movie that,
exactly.
maybe
That's why I'm hearing it now.
Exactly.
And I see the salaciousness of this story and the way it's trying to portray.
That's right. Got to get those clicks. But here's my point, guys. We go a long ways to get here. Mm-hmm. Some people writing this article, for example, they may think, oh, this is really a slap on Florida. Oh, Florida's going to get it now. We're going to make them look like a bunch of imbeciles, a bunch of rubes, right? Well, I'm not sure it plays that way. Because do you really want to be Disney and be in Disney's position when you have movies that are sparking investigations in elementary schools? Because for the normies out there who don't know what the heck Strange World is, they probably read that. And rather than going, oh, Florida, a bunch of idiots down there. They might look at it and go, what the heck is on Disney that's creating investigations? So, guys, is that what is eroding the trust in this brand?
I think you make an excellent point there. Go ahead, Stephen. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think it has 2 points to the factor if we're going to look at it this way. One, yes, it's the fact of the trust with Disney as a family and your kids is no longer there, but it falls under another aspect, the distrust of teachers now in age, and how we see all these TikTok videos and all those types of videos coming out where is the teacher following the curriculum, and is what they're saying true, or is it just another narrative? And that's where everything gets blended together in a zone of gray, because we're never finding out the full story. We're only finding out bits and pieces when it comes to these stories looking like victimhood rather than fact.
Well, there probably will not be a follow-up on this when there are other issues brought out. It'll just be memory hold. But Valiant, thinking about education myself, I would presume that given what we hear about the ability of students to read and write and do math and all of that sort of thing, and that being exceedingly low, you would think that is what they would be focusing on rather than talking about, well, my fifth graders are of a certain orientation that I probably shouldn't even know about because I'm a teacher and adult who shouldn't be prying into their private lives. And therefore I showed a movie for a brain break that represents this group. Do you find this all to just be a little bit going in the same direction? The pushback against certain parts of the education system and the pushback against Disney and what they're attempting?
Yeah, I think Disney has, as many Hollywood studios have done, because they're in such a bubble for the last decade at least, they've completely misread the room. They're insular. They think that, all the friends they run with in Burbank and Beverly Hills in Hollywood, Los Angeles, wherever the hell the case may be, San Francisco, God forbid, that dumpster fire, they think that the rest of America is the same.
They probably put broccoli on pizza.
Yeah, or pineapple, God forbid. They think that, every
you guys are both wrong. It's kale.
Okay, kale.
No, it's keto. It's definitely keto at this point.
Look, I'm gonna tell you what. When Disney did the Tiana video with making like the Disney gumbo and put kale in it, look, everybody down here
told you it's kale.
Everybody wanted to stick knives in Mickey.
I missed that. That's so funny to put kale in gumbo.
That was
kale in everything in California.
But the point is, there's this insular thinking, right? A very insular thinking. Disney
Come get
is
your
a
tofu gumbo. Sorry, I'm still stuck on it.
No, it's fine. Disney is a purely California-based, insulated bubble boy company. Now, when you look at things like Comcast, we talk about Universal, NBC, right? NBC, Universal are still very much California-based studios, no doubt. But they're owned by Comcast. Comcast is not a Hollywood company. And there's different perspectives that come in there. Mm-hmm. Just as much was AT&T with Warner. Now, where AT&T made the mistake was trusting too much of the California brain trust to run the company. And we saw what happened. That's why they jettisoned it and spun it off and let a guy like David Zaslav, he knows California, he knows Hollywood, but he's very much not a Hollywood mindset guy. Look, if you don't believe me, look at the articles that are written about David Zaslav. The Hollywood media hates David Zaslav with a passion. Right. They hate that dude. They hate him. They hate him 10 times more than they hated Bob Chapek. There's a reason for that. He's not one of them. Okay? This is where we're seeing the turn right now, is in this mindset. Disney has to get out of where they are. They cannot continue to live in this bubble. They really want to right now because Bob Iger is a stubborn, old, politically charged white dude from Beverly Hills. That's the bottom
worst
line.
Insult in Hollywood. White dude.
He is a stubborn old white man with loads of ridiculous, quote unquote white guilt. And he's basing this corporate enterprise around this. And we're seeing what's happening right now. It doesn't work.
Your other insults were acceptable, but when you took it to white dude, you went too far.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You went too far.
So sorry. Yeah.
And I have one final thought on this whole thing, going back to the whole story.
Wrap it up for us, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, this sounds like there was something more going on here that is way beyond the purview of a movie. And if I was Disney, I wouldn't want my movie to be in this case. I think you're right. I think you make an excellent point, Pro. And not only that, I think then Disney has to look in the mirror and go, well, why is this movie being associated with this? And the other point here is Disney has always kind of had a blind spot in their entertainment. And hear me out for a second. What I mean is you hit a certain age group and kids just aren't into Disney. What fifth grader is watching a Disney movie normally? And if a movie is even too risque or a problematic movie for a fifth grader, that I think is the bigger question Disney should be asking itself right now.
Yeah.
Is what have we done? Where have we gone so far wrong in this that we're even a part of this conversation? Right? I get it. You want to be more inclusive. You want to be more open, but I just can't believe that this has gotten to this point and this far. Because, I mean, honestly, I don't even know. I've never seen Strange World, but from what I've been told by some people, I mean, the messaging isn't nearly as heavy-handed as some of the other stuff. But the fact that it's even being brought up in this kind of a conversation, I think that's Disney's fault. And they need to think about that. I mean, a little bit. I mean, sit in the corner and think about it, Disney, just for a little bit.
Well, it's a huge gamble they're taking, cutting content at the same time that consumers are cutting the cord when it comes to Disney. Consumers are saying, I've had enough, I see enough, and Disney, rather than creating new content that moderates their stance and puts out non-divisive entertainment for families, well, they're sticking with what they have, cutting some of it, and definitely dropping the cadence of new content on the way. We'll see if the gamble plays as it is expected from Disney, but so far Iger has not had a solid track record once coming back. Tom, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Midnight's Edge After Dark, and all the other places I pop up from here to there like a mushroom.
Steven, outside of the basement, where be you?
You can find me on Rumble. You can find me on YouTube at JFG. You can find me on Twitter, and then again back in the basement, trying not to get yelled at by VR.
Renegade, you still doing that newfangled dangled internet thing?
I'm still doing the internet thing. You can find me on Valiant Renegade, on Renegade Online, and thank you so much tonight in that regard to the great 199.
199, baby. All right, folks, that's an inside joke. Go watch the Renegade Online show on the Valiant Renegade channel. And reference to Geeks and Gamers. You'll see some more of those 199s and references to it. It was a great show yesterday by Valiant Renegade, and lots and lots of fun with excellent guests who showed up. Big-time celebrities out there on the web. All right, folks. If you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and stick it to those algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. This is not just a conversation between four people. Please drop a comment down below. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.